Hey everybody, it's Rue. Before we start the show today, I wanted to take a moment to honor a great man who sadly passed away very recently. If you are a member of the Charlotte Amateur Astronomers Club, like I am, you have no doubt heard the name Gale Rigsby. I am planning to do a show in the future to honor Gale and talk about his many lifetime achievements, as he was a huge contributor to amateur astronomy in many ways. But for now, I would like to read from an email that was sent out to all members of the club. It's with great sadness that we share the news that Gale Rigsby passed away on Thursday, January 15th, 2025 at his home. His passing appears to have been quick with no prolonged suffering. Per Gale's wishes, there are no plans for a funeral or memorial service. Born on June 13th, 1932, Gale H. Rigsby was a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and a retired machine design engineer. He was an avid amateur astronomer since joining the Charlotte Amateur Astronomers Club way back in 1960. He served as both president and vice president of the club, and for many years was the club's observatory director and telescope maker. In 1986, Gale founded the Southern Star Astronomical Convention, a very popular amateur annual astronomy lecture weekend held at the Wild Acres Retreat in North Carolina's beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. In 2025, Gale was a speaker at the Southern Star Convention for only the second time. Despite it only being Gale's second time speaking at the convention, he was greeted with a standing ovation. He enjoyed lecturing on the history of astronomy and has built telescopes ranging up to 24 inches in diameter. Gale's telescopes have won national awards, including second place for craftsmanship at the 1986 Stellafane Convention for Amateur Telescope Makers. The Charlotte Club has honored Gale with a lifetime membership, and the observatory complex is named in his honor, the Gale H. Rigsby Observatory, home of the Charlotte Amateur Astronomers Club. Gale designed and built both the mounts and OTAs for both the 16-inch f10 classic Cassegrain telescope and the behemoth 24-inch f5 Newtonian telescope, both of which are member favorites at Charlotte's Observatory in South Carolina that is named after him. In 1997, Gale, along with two other amateurs, rescued a 12-inch Alvin Clark telescope from Rutherford Observatory, Columbia University in New York, who no longer wanted the instrument. Its new home was to be in the South Carolina State Museum, which didn't have a structure to house it at the time. Gale and his two colleagues focused their efforts on removal, preservation, and transportation of the optics. Professionals were used for the tube, drive, and pedestals. Keep in mind, it was housed atop a 14-story building. Gale performed some of the initial restoration work on the telescope after its arrival in South Carolina. The museum constructed a special facility for the telescope, which opened in 2012. Gale's efforts were a direct enabler to the South Carolina State Museum's making this telescope available for general public outreach through the many programs they sponsor. Today, the Alvin Clark is still available for use to any member of the Charlotte Amateur Astronomy Club and is located in its now permanent resting place in function at the Gale H. Rigsby Observatory. In 2025, Gale's contributions to amateur astronomy were recognized by naming asteroid 17610 after him, Rigsby. The asteroid was discovered by Dennis DeSico in 1995 and named for Gale in February of 2025. This monumental achievement was recognized at Southern Star Convention in April 2025. Gale's enthusiasm, knowledge, and willingness to share that knowledge has been an energizing force not only in the development of the Charlotte Amateur Astronomers Club, but for other clubs in the general public in the region as well. He will be sorely missed. I didn't have much chance to speak with Gale, but man, oh man, have I heard the stories. He was truly a great man and an inspiration to us all. We walk in the footsteps of giants, and few loom larger than Gale. Rest in power, Gale. You will be forever in the stars. Welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Rue. Today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. Amazing how quickly that new moon comes and goes. 78% waxing gibbous moon. Hope you've all been well. It's been a pretty hectic last week or two around here at the home base of the Astrocast in good old Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you happen to be on the eastern seaboard, even as far as Texas, you probably know that we've had some pretty crazy weather here over the last few days. Very uncommon for us here in North Carolina. You know, I grew up here, and when I was a kid, we would get snow, you know, pretty much every year. In fact, I think if you look back at the meteorological records, you can see that we have had snow pretty much every year up until, I believe it was in 2020 when we first didn't register even a trace amount of snow for the first time in over 100 years, I believe it was. Any weatherman can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but if it wasn't 2020, it was 21 or 22. But we had a pretty large winter storm impact us in the past few days. And like I say, it got as far as Texas, Louisiana, the Carolinas, and up into Virginia, West Virginia, and then obviously all of New England got just dumped on. I've got friends in West Virginia that got over a foot of snow, but, in Charlotte, we like ice storms, God forbid we get a foot of snow. That would just be too much for us to handle. So the weather gods and Captain Cumulus decided to send ice at us once again. So in 2002, when I was, I guess I was 18 in 2002. I can remember we had a really bad ice storm, and it actually knocked out power to the vast majority of residents in Charlotte for about 2 weeks. And this is what they were comparing the storm that was going to hit us to, because they haven't seen a setup like this since 2002. And in looking at the projections and the path of the storm and how cold it was and how everything was lining up, I think that was the right call to make. Very, very luckily, we didn't get blasted quite as bad as we anticipated, at least not on the southern side of town, which is where I am in Charlotte. Just a little bit north of us, they got it a lot worse with a lot more ice. But my biggest fear was, pardon me, I'm still getting over a cold, losing power because, losing power when I was a kid, and honestly, if it was just me, I wouldn't really care that much. Not the end of the world, bundle up, make a fire, you'll be all right. But, I've got my retired mother who has some medical condition. She lives with us and she needs a CPAP when she sleeps. So she needs, oxygen through her CPAP. We have Zachary, the parrot. He cannot get cold like that. We can't have him in freezing weather. He's a tropical bird, so can't have that. And, a whole host of other things. And, I like to stay comfortable too. God forgive me for being, a little bit vain in that way. But we prepared, as much as we possibly could. I was genuinely worried. I didn't want anything to happen to our pets, and I certainly didn't want anything to happen to my mother. Actually, I want to take a moment while we're talking about mothers here. I just want to take a moment to memorialize a very great woman who passed away last week. My oldest friend in the world, Chris, his mother, Pam, actually passed away tragically just last week. And I was able to see her recently. I was able to visit her in the hospital before she went, and I'm glad I was able to do that. But she was like a mom to me when I was growing up. She, made me sandwiches and Kool-Aid, and, I saw her just as often as my own mom for years, when I was a kid. So it was really, really tough seeing her go. And I just want to give a shout out to Chris. You're obviously like a brother to me and have been for the longest time. So may Pam rest in power. And she was a great woman. So that being said, we wanted to prepare for this storm as much as we possibly could. And I am somebody who tends to think of every possible scenario. And I pretty quickly came to the realization that, like thousands of others this time of year for this particular storm, I decided that a generator would be the way to go. And I made that decision, I would say Tuesday, I want to say, as they were anticipating the storm coming through. So, several days before like all the stores were out of everything. But it was very, very hard to find a generator. Not most of the local stores don't keep a large stock of them, and they were already sold out. I found a place that could have one delivered to their store, which I could pick up on that Friday. And then I found a different one that was available at our local, not local, a Tractor Supply store within 2 hours drive. So I ended up canceling the original order that I placed to pick up at the one store on Friday. And I went with Tractor Supply because we've got a same as cash credit card with them for a 12-month payment. So I figured that was the better deal. And it was the same amount of wattage for $300 less. So it was kind of a no-brainer. So went and got that. I drove 2 hours to get there while I was sick as a dog. Because like I say, I came down with this cold last week. And God, I was so sick, but I was just thinking like, God, it's going to be even worse if I'm sick and I can't have any heat. So I just, I did what I had to do, and I went down and got it. I had to take the day off of work Friday because I was so sick. I got the heavy duty, 12 gauge. I didn't go 10 gauge because I didn't feel I needed them, frankly, but I got 12 gauge extension cords. Didn't have enough time to wire up a manual transfer switch, which is ideally what you want when you're running a generator, which I've come to know. But I'm quite happy that I did not need to use it. That being said, I am glad that I'll be prepared in the future if I need to use it. And we are going to plan to get that manual transfer switch installed now. So that way in the future, if this ever does happen again, we'll be ready, and it will be just a simple matter of getting the generator out and plugging in a single cord. It's pretty neat how those transfer switches work. They actually set up, there's a few different ways you can do it, but the way that I think I'd like to do it is with the transfer switch. So basically you reroute some of the breakers in your main breaker fuse panel to this transfer switch, and you basically pick which circuits are most important to you and that fit under the wattage threshold for whatever generator it is that you're running. And I think with most people, you'd probably want to get a manual transfer switch that is rated much higher than the generator that you currently have. In case you want to upgrade in the future to something that is more powerful, you'll have the capacity and bandwidth to do that. And then essentially when something happens, you flip the switch and it cuts off power from being able to backfeed into the main power lines outside. So utility workers can't get hurt from your generator, and it moves the power over to those circuits that you've set up in the switch. And forgive me if I completely botched that. I've been reading all about this stuff for the past week. And anyway, we're going to plan on doing that. I'll pour probably a small concrete pad for the generator. And yeah, we'll be ready for the next storm whenever it decides to rear its ugly head. Now, before that, we had the big Aurora Borealis outbreak that occurred, and that I think most of our European listeners probably had a much better opportunity to see than those of us in North America. I didn't hear from a whole lot of people that they got incredible views when it happened last week. Me and a friend, the aforementioned friend Chris that I was talking about, we actually went out to our I guess I would say our prior dark sky site, because it ain't dark no more, we learned. We went out there, about half an hour outside the city of Charlotte, and just kind of sat back and watched and took photos and talked and, sat out under the stars for 3 hours, which was wonderful. We had a great time. Didn't see any aurora, but that's okay. Just getting out under the stars and being able to talk with a friend is some of the absolute best way that you can spend time, in my humble opinion. So even if you don't succeed in whatever it is that you set out to do, you can still very much appreciate that time. And that's one of my favorite things about stargazing. So yeah, we sat out, and I tried for a second time to get this shot of Orion that I wanted to get. So I've been trying for a couple of years now to get the ultra wide field, like full Milky Way winter shot that shows, all of Orion and Taurus and the Hyades, the Pleiades, the, Twins and Gemini, the entire, image, if you will, of the winter constellations in one shot. And I was using my Canon R5 with a 14 millimeter lens. So, definitely had the width and focal length to get it. But the area that we went to, well, the first time I went down to the observatory, and that was on Sunday night. We had Monday off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And it was great. The conditions were wonderful. I got everything started up, and there were only a couple other people out that night. Justin was there, who was on the show a few weeks ago. And we were talking, and I got my rig going. I brought the move, shoot, move down in the R5, and I was just having a ball taking images. And the craziest thing happened. So it was 34 degrees outside at 7:45 p.m. And the dew point was 32 degrees. By 8 p.m., mind you, this was a perfect clear night, new moon, great transparency. In fact, somebody was on the 24-inch Newtonian, guy named Butch, and he was looking at I kid you not, magnitude 17 galaxy. So, very, very good conditions. And when 8 o'clock came, we hit 32 degrees, which was the dew point. And instantly everything iced over, fog appeared everywhere. I mean, it was like you snapped your finger and the entire environment changed. It was so crazy. Like I've seen rapid transformations before in the weather, but man, that was something else. That really was something else. So that was the first attempt. The second attempt was whenever I met with Chris down at, you guessed it, a graveyard. This particular graveyard, it's a really cool one. It's a Civil War graveyard that was founded way back in 1810. So some of the people that are buried there are very, very old. So we're always extremely respectful anytime we go. We've been going there since we were teenagers, like literally since we were teenagers, we've been going out there to hang out. And based on the box of beer cans that I found, it seems that some other people are continuing to to do that. They weren't like spread out in the yard or anything. They just left a box in the parking lot, which, you know, can't say I never did when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure we picked up after ourselves, but I might have done something like that. Any case, we get out there and it was a pretty good night. And like I say, we were looking for Aurora, but I brought the exact same setup because I still had it, you know, all kind of ready to go from the prior Sunday night that I had tried. And what I pretty quickly realized was the light dome that was coming off of Charlotte had gotten just so much worse since the last time that I was out there. And it was awful. I mean, this place used to be one of our favorite places to go locally because we could both get there, you know, within a 20, 30 minute drive, not too far away, but, you know, far enough outside the city where I would be comfortable calling it a, you know, a Bortle 4.5 or 5, you know, depending on the conditions. I'd say it's a 6 now. I mean, it was bad with the light dome and everything. Could still see a lot more than I can from my house, but my house is damn near an 8 now. You know, I mean, it's just the light pollution, guys. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And, you know, when we were driving down the street that you drive down to get there, which happens to be the street that I grew up on as a child, it used to be out in the country, a town called Mint Hill, North Carolina. So many of the new houses that are on that road are just lit up like neon signs. Like they're building McMansions in all these neighborhoods because I guess the rich people who buy the property out there, they want country living, you know, but they want to live very modern in the country. Don't ask me. Like for me, let me have a 60-acre plot of land and put my house right in the middle of those 60 acres. And I don't want a single light to be seen. Like I don't want you to even know there is a house there if you're driving by, but that's not what they do. They build these giant McMansions that are, you know, right off the main road. And then like the one house, it had like windows all over the front of the home, just like excessive architectural windows, I guess you could say. And every single one of them had individual lights underneath, 2 of them, and they weren't shielded or anything. They were just pointing up and just obnoxiously bright. And I'm thinking, like, why would you want your home? I guess they think it looks cool, but man, just so bad for the environment in terms of light pollution. And then there's also a new park that they have on the same road. It was 28 degrees out that night, and it had been dark for 4 hours, and that place was lit up like it was a June day at 4 or 8 o'clock at night, and kids were still playing on the jungle gym. Like it was just lit up like it was a regular night, and people were there, and they weren't. So, I mean, that's kind of why the graveyard is not a good location anymore, because things like that keep happening. And I don't think people realize when you keep adding, you know, lights like that, it does impact the light dome that's coming from Charlotte and just adds and adds and adds. And it's so high there now. It's like the light dome is, God, it's got to be higher than 45 degrees up. I mean, it's bad. And that used to be just such a great spot. I mean, even when I got into astrophotography, when I very first started during the pandemic, there is a church that is closer to those lights that I just mentioned. And you probably, if you're a longtime listener, you might remember hearing me talk about the pastor that would, let me set up out there. And I had a friendship with him, Pastor Jolly, and he's a great guy. But anyway, I would set up at that church, which was miles before you would get to that graveyard. And it was, you could see the Milky Way very easily from there. And that was just in 2020. So, if we continue going at this rate, we're not going to have a sky left. If that's what, the conditions that I'm seeing locally here in Charlotte, I'd be curious what you guys are seeing in your towns and cities. How bad is it getting for you in the last few years? Because, these are the kind of things that we do pay attention to. It also makes me want to get a sky quality meter so I can actually start measuring these things instead of just, anecdotal stories about how it used to be darker. Actually document them and say, no, this is how much it was last year. This is what it is this year, because that's the only way you'll ever impact change is by, being able to go to, scientists, public officials, or what have you, and saying, look, here is where we were, here is where we are, and here is where we're going to be if we continue on this path. And it's not a good place where you end up. Like I say, if there's one hill to die on that the Astrocast has, it's fighting light pollution. I'm a firm believer that we need to do something about it if we want to preserve the night skies for future generations to be able to enjoy and appreciate, and make sure that it is not something that is just for the rich, like, flying in rocket ships to spaces right now. We don't want seeing the stars to become one of those types of experiences. And guys, we're well on our way to that being the case. I hate to tell you. So anyway, rant is over, but we didn't see the aurora. I didn't get great images. They were all blown out because of the light pollution. And I stacked them and edited them. I managed to solve it. The 14 millimeter image, I managed to actually solve it. In PixInsight, which was interesting. But yeah, they just weren't that great quality, and I didn't have too much integration. So we will have to try another time for that beautiful Orion image that I'm hoping to capture one of these days. And, in all honesty, I'll probably have to do it from a truly dark location, because these, Bortle 4 and 5 spots aren't the ones you'll want to capture that beautiful scene. You really do want Bortle 1 for that type of scenario. So yeah, I was sick as a dog for 3 or 4 days, and I just started feeling human again yesterday, and you can probably hear it in my voice still. I can still feel it in my lungs, the junk. My poor wife ended up getting it, so now she's sick, and I'm trying to take care of her as best I can, and just that time of year. So haven't been able to do too much this past weekend just because of the weather being the way that it was. But I have been working on the remote rig and getting everything set up there. I finally got the correct bolts in terms of, the right size bolts that I needed to get everything mounted up properly with the new dovetail that I got. I wanted to mention to you guys, Ace Hardware, if you have one of those locally, they've got a really good selection of different screws and nuts and bolts. If you ever need, a nut or a bolt that's kind of in a weird, unique size because, telescopes, right? That's a really good place to check. Somebody recommended it to me on the Discord, the Astrocast Society Discord. And I was like, you know what? I got an Ace not too far from here. So I went up there one day and checked it out. And sure enough, they got a lot. And they got them nuts and bolts, that is, in different materials too. So you can get like, galvanized or regular steel. They even have like chrome plated screws, if that's your thing, and washers and, all that good stuff. So definitely check them out if you ever need to get a, like a unique sized longer screw or nut for a dovetail situation or whatever it may be. They're a good option. I also noticed when I was in Tractor Supply last week that they had a pretty good selection too. I don't think it was quite as good as what I saw at Ace, but they did have a pretty good selection. I only mention that because Lowe's and Home Depot and your big box stores, they generally don't have a very good selection of the type of screws and nuts and bolts that we tend to use in our hobby. I guess with the one exception being if you need like large galvanized bolts for setting up a pier in concrete, that sort of thing, then oftentimes they're a good spot to check for that. But for the smaller ones, and by smaller, I mean like 8 inches or less, then Ace is a very, very good spot to check. And if you don't have one nearby, Tractor Supply or Agri Supply is probably a good second choice. So I don't know if you saw the news or not, but it looks like ZWO has officially announced the AM7 mount. So this is something that, was about as secret as the fact that Christmas is coming next December. I think everybody knew about it. And we actually saw FCC filings like last month. I believe it was in December. So we knew that it was coming soon, but they finally posted on their Facebook page the other day, or not the other day, this morning. I don't remember. It was very recently they posted on their Facebook page about the AM7, and they have January 28th, which is going to be today. If you're listening to this today, set up for when they're going to be talking about the AM7 more. So I assume they'll be releasing more details such as the actual release date, how much it's going to cost, and all those sorts of good things that are going to be coming. So there's not a whole lot I can tell you about the AM7 because they haven't announced a whole lot, but they're going to later. Obviously, with it being a 7 series, that seems to speak to the fact that it's going to be, in line with like CEM 70, up to 70 pounds type mounts, which is what most folks would expect. Obviously, it's going to be a higher weight capacity than your AM5. It does appear to have in-body cabling, like through the mount cabling for both power and USB-C. Sorry if you hear Bane in the background. So they are using the AM5N and AM3N design language on the AM7. So, in-body cabling, USB-C through the mount, as well as power, both on the saddle, power on the saddle and USB-C on the saddle, that is. I don't see anything. I'm looking at the image. The video they released is really cool. It shows like a whole bunch of the production models on a shelf, and they're all slewing at the same time in the same direction. Looks really neat, but there's not a whole lot I can gather from it. I mean, it looks very much like the AM5, just it's a 7, so it's a little bit bigger, higher weight capacity. I do understand that they're using a different type of aluminum. Apparently they're going to be using, I think I saw 6063 instead of the more common 6061. So that's something, I suppose, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're talking about a beefier mount from ZWO. So, I mean, that's great news in my opinion. Though I will say there are some other competitors that are going to be emerging or have been emerging recently that I think are definitely worth keeping an eye on as well in this space. So in particular, I stumbled across a group called MLAstro. It's a vendor that I'd seen before. They look to be a smaller group, just based on the things that I've seen as far as manufacturing is concerned, that makes very high quality mounts, and they have had the SAL33 mount, which is their signature harmonic mount, for some time now, and they are looking to take the next step, and they want to have an observatory class mount, which is going to be the SAL66. So it'll be designed for longer focal length setups, and really for remote use is ideally what they're intending this for. Hence the observatory class mount call outs on their website. Cable management is something that's going to be extremely important to them. And really neat. They're actually going to have support for robotic polar alignment. So this is something that they're not selling yet, but they are offering as a future add-on for the SAL66 mount, which I believe they're going to be taking pre-orders for starting in this summer. And then they're going to have the launch in autumn of 2026. They're targeting $2,200 to $2,500, and that's without the robotic polar alignment. So honestly, $2,200 for a 66-pound class mount is really good. And the quality of their stuff appears to be top notch from what I've seen so far. They have a zero shift polar alignment alt-as base, and then they'll have the optional robotic polar alignment add-on. So if you run a remote mount at a remote observatory, like AstroPeak Observatories, new partner of the show, we'll talk about them a little bit more later on. Then occasionally you might want to re-polar align your mount for any number of different reasons. And this could potentially solve for that. And I know a lot of people have, mentioned robotic polar alignment in recent years. I know Queeve, the Lazy Geek, recently did a video on it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. The availability and pricing looks great if they're going to be doing pre-orders in summer and then launching just a few months later in autumn. And the price point that they're targeting, man, that's hard to beat. So definitely we'll keep an eye out for that. If anyone from MLAstro happens to hear this and you guys want to talk about this mount, I would love to talk to you about it. So feel free to drop me a line. You can email rue@theastrocast.com, and I would love to discuss it with you, because I think it looks like a really, really cool product. And I love to see competition for companies like ZWO come into the market. So yeah, definitely some cool news on the Astro mounts front. AM7 coming out, and then we got other competitors like MLAstro coming onto the market. Very, very, very cool stuff. So I have been thinking more and more, obviously, about remote observatories, because I'm going to be making the trip out to Utah and visiting AstroPeak observatories this summer. So I've told you guys on 2 weeks ago show about AstroPeak, and I want you to know that there are still a few spots left in the initial pre-order section for the very first set of peers that they will be offering. I think it's been cut in half since we last talked about it, so there's not too many spots left, but there are a few. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. They got 9 spots left. So I think it was 18 spots last time we talked, and they're down to 9. I know that several of the people in our Discord have signed up already, including myself. I'm extremely excited to get a rig out there. And I just want to mention one more time, if you guys are interested in setting up a remote mount, that you can do that with AstroPeak. And we actually have a little bit of a partnership in place that'll save you a little bit of money. So if you've been thinking about joining the Astrocast Patreon, you can do that. And then you will get access to a $5 a month discount to reserve your peer at AstroPeak. So it essentially pays for your Patreon membership, which helps support the show, which is a good way for me to keep the show ad free. So it's a win-win for everybody. Bortle 1 skies, 7,000 feet. I did talk to Nathan, one of the partners and entrepreneurs behind AstroPeak, and we are going to have a Q&A session at some point in the very near future. Trying to give him a little bit more time to get things together, because I know there are a lot of moving parts to the project that he is working on. But I know that people have questions, and I definitely have a few myself. So I want to ask him a few things about it, and just get his feedback on it. So that'll be coming in the near future as well. Me and PARISH, who's been on the show a few times, were talking about a road trip for a while now, to go deliver, our rigs out to the remote observatory. And initially we were going to do Texas. I won't lie to you. But then when Nathan announced Astro Peak, we were like, okay, we definitely want to do that just because of the higher elevation, et cetera. And PARISH already has a mount down in Texas. So he figures, why not diversify and get one in a different area, which is not a bad idea. So me and him were talking about how we want to go about actually physically transferring our devices out to Utah. And, I was looking and I'm like, man, oh man, I don't know if I want to fly out there. I said the drive it's a really long drive. If I drive, 2 days straight driving, like 18 hours, I believe, to get out there. And then he was talking to me and he's going to be putting a big, like 150 millimeter aperture in his big mount out there. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but very, heavy grade stuff, not like a small refractor on an AM3 like I'm going to be doing. He's doing a long focal length 150 millimeter aperture scope. So, obviously that changes things for him. He can't just pack it up easily and ship it. He actually looked into that and it was going to cost, upwards of $2,000 just to ship everything out there. And at that cost, you might as well drive it out yourself because, for a number of reasons, you're going to be able to ensure that it gets safely delivered, et cetera. I would always prefer to deliver it in person. I understand that's not always possible though. Sometimes we have to ship things. And if you do have to ship it, I guess the best advice I could give you is just make sure that you break down all of the individual components. And I say that because Justin told us early on when he shipped one of his rigs that ended up breaking. I think that was Justin. Was that Justin or Nico who told us that? I think it was Justin. But anyway, break down your rig, individually package each component as best you can and make sure that it has lots of foam because you can write fragile all over that box. And the guys who are shipping these items, they're working. So you can't really blame them if they don't see fragile and toss your box a little too hard. And you don't want that to happen with glass. So for me, it was just like, the cost of flying out and the dealing with being in the airport. And I don't like flying already. I would rather drive it out and deliver it in person myself. So we talked about it and what we think we're going to do, and we're going to confirm this as the date gets closer and completion gets confirmed and everything, is I will drive up to meet with PARISH where he is up in the Midwest outside of Chicago. And forgive me, PARISH, I don't remember exactly where you live, but I know you drove to meet us at First Light. And then me and him will go in his vehicle, presumably, on a road trip. He's got a really nice car. That's why I say that. You want to take my truck. He's got a great Highlander. And we will drive the two rigs out to Astro Peak. And it should be a really beautiful trip, which I'm quite excited to make and hand deliver and then get to meet with Nathan, interview him, obviously, check out the facilities and all that great stuff. So we're super excited to do it. I can't wait for summertime to get here so we can do it. But the good thing is it gives me plenty of time to test everything and make sure that I've got everything down to a T as far as remotely operating the device. One good thing about my house is I've got two networks at home. So testing remote devices is very easy for me to do since I've got two different networks. I guess you can do it without two networks because you could use your mobile phone, right? And test remotely that way, but just makes it a little bit easier for me. But it got me thinking about the things that I still need to add to my rig before I make it a fully remote rig. And while I technically could just put it down there as it sits today, and it would do a good job, there are some things that I could add on that would make it much, much better as a remote rig. Obviously, a filter wheel is the first thing that comes to mind. Even though I am using a one-shot color camera, a filter wheel offers a lot of advantages when you're running a remote rig. First of all, I can put a dark filter in the filter wheel. So anytime I want to update my darks, I can just move the filter wheel to the dark position and then take darks, which is something that is very, very good to have. I can also do dual narrowband on one of the filters. Even though it's Bortle 1 skies, there's no reason not to do narrowband imaging at times when I want to. So it's good to have the option to do that. And then obviously having like a UV IR cut filter would be a great option as well for getting really pretty stars and those sorts of things. And depending on what the target is, maybe just using it on regular targets as well. And then the other device that I can add on would be an automated flat panel. And that's something that I definitely want to add on, because having an automated flat panel will make every session so much easier. I'm not a huge fan of sky flats. I know that they work. I've done them before successfully. And yeah, they can absolutely work. But if you've got a flat panel that you can remotely flip up and down, it's just something that is so repeatable and user friendly that I don't really have to count on clear skies during the daytimes or the weather being good for this time or that. Even if the building's closed, I can still use a flat panel, right? So that will end up working out well. And since that's, 2 extra devices on the rig that need to be installed, tested, and then configured to work remotely, having a few months to get that all set up and running flawlessly is just a very, very good thing. So I'm actually happy that I've got a little bit of time. And, hey, Galaxy season's coming up. I still have the C8, obviously, that I'm working on. I know the next steps that I need to take with that, which are essentially just getting a larger guide camera, and then a larger off-axis guider, so I can have a larger prism that's able to pick up a larger amount of stars. So that was kind of the big problem with using the ZWO off-axis guider that I initially purchased. The prism, I believe it's only 8x8 millimeters, so it's a really small prism. And then you combine that with the ASI 120 mini guide camera that we, so many of us use very successfully with a wide field refractor, but that sensor is so tiny. You put that on a tiny prism and you're lucky to get 1 or 2 stars tops. And like I say, you're lucky to get 1 star a lot of the times, depending on where you are. And that's just not a recipe for success whenever you're trying to get auto guiding working properly on such a long focal length scope. So I'm excited about that. Initially I was like, am I going to be disappointed if I don't physically have access to my best refractor and my best mount, the AM3? But the more I thought about it, I was like, I would be crazy not to put that out there under the best skies, because that will give me access to the best data that I'll ever have. And I'll be able to use it whenever I want, which is going to be a heck of a lot more frequently than I can currently use it at home. And it's not like I'm going to be without any means here. I still have, obviously, the C8. I'll have my Rokinon 135, which is a great hands-on rig that I can bring with me anywhere. If I want to go on a dark sky trip, it's a great mobile rig. I still has my SV Bony 80 millimeter doublet, my OG scope that I've had forever. I've got my Canon R5 and my Canon R7. I've got the Star Adventure GTI mount. I've got the CEM26. I've got the Move Shoot Move. I've got the Star Adventure. Oh man, I could just go on and on and on. So yeah, I've got plenty of gear to keep me busy while my astrograph is sitting up under Bortle 1 skies in Utah. And I'm not trying to brag when I say that. Honestly, I kind of wish I had less gear. I think I might end up selling some of it this year because I hate to see anything collect dust. And, I know that there are people out there who could use some of this gear, and it would not be collecting dust. So let me just take a brief moment to mention to you that if you're new to this hobby and you're like many of us are, in terms of, acquiring new gear, and, I'm not even going to say I acquired all this gear very quickly. I didn't. It was over, a 3 to 5 year period that I acquired the majority of this gear. Just make sure that you take stock regularly and only upgrade when you truly need to, which I definitely feel like I did. Like, I waited until I felt that I had exceeded my skill level on a given piece of equipment before I would upgrade to the next piece. But just, really take stock of what you have and what you need versus what you don't truly need. Because, you don't want to end up in a situation where you have a whole lot of gear and you can only run 1 or 2 rigs at a time, because, it's very, very easy to happen. And I've certainly had this conversation with lots of friends in astronomy and astrophotography over the years. So just something to think about. Obviously, your mileage may vary and you can do whatever you want with your money. Just my opinion. And, speaking of my opinion, I did want to just point out one quick thing. When we were talking about remote rigs last week, one of our Patreon members and Discord members rightfully pointed out that you can use a mini computer with the N100 Intel chips. And he pointed out that, he does use the I believe he said N100, it might have been N150, but he uses those with his rigs successfully. And you absolutely can. I guess what I was getting at is, like, given the choice between a N150 or a Ryzen processor for the same price point, I'm going to choose the Ryzen every time, just because objectively it is a more powerful processor. I don't think anyone's going to debate that. But again, I say all this to tell you, like, whenever I'm telling you guys about my opinions on things, just keep in mind, my way isn't always going to be the right way. In fact, I would say oftentimes it's not going to be the right way. I try to share with you my experience as I learn and grow in this hobby, just like you guys are learning and growing in this hobby. And, if you disagree with anything that I say, that's great. Like, I encourage it. Please do think for yourself and try different things. And if you find something, that I say didn't work out, or you did something differently and it worked better, let me know about it, because that's how we all learn and grow. And I guess what I'm getting at is, like, no one's opinion is wrong. There are obviously objective facts. But when we're talking about, what works or doesn't work for any given situation in astrophotography, there's always going to be various shades of gray. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. It's my opinion, and you are certainly entitled to your own. And not only would I, ask you to have your own opinion, but I would encourage you to, because that's what makes the world so interesting, is we all have our own different ways of doing things and our own thoughts and opinions. And that's really what makes this hobby so great. If we all just had, a ZWO AM7 with the exact same camera and the exact same scope, it wouldn't really be that fun debating the things that we debate in the forums and talking about the things that we do if we were all just using the exact same gear. So try something different, like me. Like, I love shooting the ultra wide field stuff. I love playing around with my Canon R5 and R7 and seeing what I can do astrophotography wise, from, the move, shoot, move with wide field lenses. Like, I was looking at a 35 millimeter lens the other day and thinking, man, I could get some really sweet shots with that, a little bit closer than, 14 or 16 millimeters, but still wider than a 50. And, like, these are the type of things that I think about and that I like to mess with. And your, mileage is going to vary. You're going to be interested in different things. And it's a big melting pot of ideas. And it's really, in my opinion, one of the coolest things about astrophotography, because there's so many different avenues that you can go down, and there's so many different ways that you can make it your own. I mean, I think back to like Mark, for example. He's like the perfect poster child for this. He set up a rig that is so versatile in terms of focal lengths, and his ability to, throw everything in one bag and go anywhere in the world with that rig and be able to capture galaxies to wide field nebula. And what he is doing is probably not what the vast majority of astrophotographers would do. But does that make his images any less appreciable? Absolutely not. They're awesome, and all of his work is just as incredible as what I see from telescopes and astrographs and everything else. So anyway, my rant is over on that one. Be yourself. You are unique and an individual, and that is what makes this world a beautiful place. I mentioned the Patreon members earlier, and I wanted to take a minute and welcome some new members. So I think I mentioned Rick from Dark Dragons Astronomy a couple weeks ago had joined the show. I can't remember. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, we got not only Rick, but we also got Jeff. So we got both of the guys from Dark Dragons Astronomy are now members of the Astrocast Society, which is really super cool because they have been longtime supporters. In fact, they were our very first sponsor for the Astrocast. And not only, is Dark Dragons a sponsor, but Jeff and Rick are also contributing members to the Discord. So I wanted to say a big special thank you to Rick and Jeff. You guys are great. You're very, very good friends, obviously. And can't wait to see you both again. I wish I could have caught up with you at the observatory a couple weeks ago, but as things worked out, it just wasn't possible. Also want to give a shout out to our newest member, Sean. Sean, thank you so much for joining, man. I see you active on the Facebook page quite frequently. You also recently shared, we had a little poll go up for a new merch drop that is going to be happening within the next week. And you shared that poll and gave your thoughts on it. And so I guess that's probably the perfect time to announce we're going to have the dad cap ended up being the winner. We put out a poll saying, would you like trucker hat or dad cap to be the next hat for the Astrocast, because we did the beanie and the flat brim hat so far, and the dad cap won in a landslide. We got way more votes for the dad cap. If any of you guys want a trucker cap, though, let me know, and I'll talk to the provider who actually makes the merchandise for us and see if we can get some of those. But it seems like there was just so much more interest in the dad cap. So we are going to go ahead and make that. I have submitted the design. I'm just waiting for the samples to come through on that. And once I verify that the quality is there, we will release them into the wild. So if you've been waiting to get an Astrocast hat, stay tuned. You can go to theastrocast.com. It'll redirect you to my other website, qcru.com, but the store is there. And just check back there. I'll put it in the show notes as well. So you can check back and see as soon as that's available. Feel free to follow us over on Facebook as well if you'd like. And I'll be happy to post there as soon as that's available. All right, guys, I think you know what time it is. It's time for Social Media Stardust. All right, Social Media Stardust this week. I've got a very, very, very good one. I'm not going to blow up your spot too much, Parish, because you are a friend and a friend of the show. There might be a little bit of bias there. I don't think so, but you said it was an extremely quick processing of M42, but I know how much work you have put into this based on the conversations that we have had. Parish has been working on capturing the Orion Nebula in mono using LRGB HOO filters, and man, oh man, the quality is just outrageous on the image that he has posted. Now, I will say he hasn't posted the final version of it yet, according to him, but it was still the most jaw-dropping image that I have seen since the last time we spoke. So I thought it was fair for it to be this week's Social Media Stardust winner. And as a reminder, this is a contest that we do on the Astrocast. Each episode, you can enter simply by posting online. If I happen to see it on any of the groups, obviously I will let you know. The other way that you can do it is by just hashtagging the Astrocast or Social Media Stardust. And then, you know, anywhere that I happen to see it, obviously we'll let you know. But the winner at the end of the year is going to be getting a cash prize, as well as from the partners over at Astropeak Observatory. They are going to be donating a Seestar S30 telescope as part of the prize package, and who knows what else will be thrown in by various sponsors and partners throughout this year. But if you would like to win, just, you know, make sure you tag the Astrocast or Social Media Stardust in your post. But yeah, Parish, great job on M42, man. Absolutely beautiful image, and I can't wait to see what the final process is. And then I guess the last thing that I want to mention before we wrap up the day is Tim. Tim is, man, so he's a lot of things to the Astrocast, but for what we're going to be talking about right now, he is the admin and mod for our Discord. And he has helped me so much this year by helping me really get the Astrocast over to a 2.0 look in our Discord, and something that we can really be proud of. We've got all the different categories and areas that we can go to. He's just been a godsend in so many ways. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, Tim, for everything that you've done for the show. But I want to mention that he has been working on a homebrew project for quite some time now. And he's up to his second iteration now of the AC5 mount. That'd be the Astrocast 5 mount, which I think is a play on AM5. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. And it even says powered by Captain Cumulus on it. And man, he has done just a phenomenal job with this mount. I cannot believe that he built this himself, because I mean, if you look at it, and I am looking at it right now as I'm telling you this, this literally looks like something that you could buy online on, you know, Agena right now or High Point. And it would not be out of place at all. So that is just really cool. So I wanted to give a shout out to you for that, Tim. You've done an amazing job with that mount. I'm going to post photos of it over on the Astrocast Facebook page. So if you'd like to check that out, please drop by and just, you know, leave a comment on Tim's work, because I think he's done a bang up job with this mount. I hope that, you know, maybe one day he'll mass produce it. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but if it does, that would be super cool to see. And it's definitely a really great mount. I have no doubt about that. So well done on that, Tim. Thank you for everything that you do for us on the Discord. Really can't thank you enough for that, man. All right, guys, I need to give my lungs a rest. I'm getting winded over here. I'm still getting over this cold, and boy, oh boy, is it tough. So I'm going to get this wound up for now, but I really appreciate you guys sitting down and talking with us for an hour today. It has been great catching up with you. I'll have a lot more to share in the coming weeks. We got a few interviews lined up. We're going to be sitting down with some of the boys once again to follow up on some things. I know definitely going to be talking with Rick and Jeff soon. We're going to be talking with Nathan soon. And then I have a couple other tricks up my sleeve. So stay tuned for that in February. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening to the Astrocast. I am your host, Rue, and as always, clear skies.
Wednesday evening, the feed goes live. Rue's voice cuts through the dark like a 135. From backyard scopes to mountain peaks, we're all tuned in, no time to sleep. Red dot finders, coma correctors gain. He breaks it down like it's simple, never pain. Comets rising, planets